So in this video, we're going to be making the train body. I know it looks like a lot of dimensions, but it's actually going to not be that bad when we start looking at all the different features that we're going to be adding onto it. So what we're going to do first is kind of make a shape that we're going to be cutting all of our other features out of. So when we go to Autodesk, you're going to make sure you have a standard part file, so a new standard part file. And we're going to start our 2D sketch on the YZ plane. And we're going to add in a rectangle. I'm going to use a 2-point rectangle because I want it to be centered on this. Okay. So for the height, I'm just going to add in 4 inches. And then for the width, I want it to be 2 inches because that's the exact dimension. Okay. Alright, so our width right here. Okay, and our height, I just kind of put something in for just a placeholder because we're going to be making this arc right here. So we're going to place an arc, and I'm going to use the center point one because I want the center point to line up in the middle here to there. And just to double check that it's in the center. Okay. And from the bottom, we want it to be, let me just double check that number. Yep, 0.375 inches from the bottom. And we want the radius for our arc to be 2.35. Alright, so we could see here that it kind of extended off to the side, so we could just use the trim tool and trim that up. So we can see here that 4 inches was more than we needed for our rectangle. So we can finish our sketch. And we can extrude this section. And for this section, I'm going to have it to be 5.5 minus 1 point, actually, nope, it is just 1.75 because we just want this one section right here. So, yep, so if we just follow the line down, 1.75. Our next sketch we're going to place right on this surface here, and you need to make sure that you use project geometry, and we're going to use a rectangle. So this time we're going to use the 2-point rectangle. Make sure you click on this bottom edge right here and then click on this edge right here. So the height of this is going to be 0.88. Okay, so that is, if we follow the line out, yep, 0.88. Then we need a circle that's going to be on top. It's going to be right in the center, so it's 1 inch away from there. And it's going to be 1.38 from the bottom. So our circle tool. So 1.38. And from the edge, it's just 1 inch. And our radius is 1.75, so we're going to need to double that. So times 2. Yep, so we have 0.75 times 2, so now we have 1.5. So we can finish our sketch and extrude. Make sure you click on both sections before you change the distance, because sometimes it will only select the second part of it if you do that. So 5.5 minus 1.75 for this section, and then okay. So that was that, just this section right here, because it doesn't give us the exact dimension, but we do know the total length of it is 5.5 and then minus the length that's right here. So our next part, we can cut out this section. So if we start a sketch right here, make sure you project geometry. All right, and remember the home button on your keyboard will either zoom in and out for your entire object just so it fills your screen. I'm going to place a rectangle, so I'm going to use the 2-point rectangle, place the edge of it there, and just kind of place it here. And then I'm going to use the center point arc because I want this center of the arc to be right in the center. Yep, see that little green dot? That's what you want to see. The center of this one, so you want the green dot, that's right there, and then, yep, green dot, that's right there. Okay, so now to find our dimensions, we know that we want a radius of 1/2 inch. And our radius from the edge is going to be 1/4 inch. So that rectangle you want to be 1/4 inch for its width. And then we need to know the location of where this center mark is, or our center point is, to the bottom. So from here to here, we need to figure out that dimension. And if we look over here, we can see it is 1.75. And I actually got really close. Okay, so now we can finish our sketch and extrude. So remember, you got to click on both sections first and change your distance to all, and make sure it's cutting through your entire object. So right now we have all of the different features added except for all of the holes. So right now is the best time to add in your rounds and fillets. So remember, the fillet tool, if you just used the chamfer recently, is underneath there. And for this one, we have round all edges to a radius of 0.1. So except for drilled holes, that's why we're doing it beforehand, because then we can use the all rounds and get them all at the same time. So if we just change this to 0.1, select all rounds, now it selects all of them. And then if you want to, you can select all fillets. I think it looks a little bit better adding that in, but you don't have to. Just make sure that you do have all rounds added, and then you can click OK. So that gets all of this done all in one step, so you're not just clicking on all of the different edges to add the fillets in. And also when you do something like that, sometimes the fillets can look a little weird, like right here. Sometimes you'll get a point, even if you do add in the fillets everywhere. It's just because of how they layer. So the next thing we're going to do is add in holes for our axle peg right here. So we're going to have one hole here and one hole here. So we're going to add in points. And then also make sure you project geometry from this outside edge. So remember, when you're dimensioning, you're doing it from the outside edge, not from this inside surface. Because when we go back to our drawing of our object, we're going from the sharp edges right here. And we just wanted to round all of the edges earlier just because it makes it a little bit simpler for us. So what we want is from this back end, this one's going to be 1 inch, and this one's going to be 4.5 inches. So that one is 1 inch, and from here to here, 4.5. Right, and the height of these, if we follow this line out, is 1/2 inch for both of these. So the reason why we want to do just points is so we can use our hole tool. Remember, if you used thread recently, it's underneath thread. So it finds both of those, and we want to make sure the distance is through all. We want to make sure that we select the thread, and also make sure the depth is at full depth. If you haven't used this recently, it will most likely be unchecked, and this is what it's going to look like, and it won't show the thread going to the full depth. That's the representation of thread. So thread to full depth. and you're going to make sure it's 1/4 inch, 20 threads per inch, and coarse thread. So we have 1/4 inch, 20 threads per inch, and coarse thread. And then you can just click OK. The next one we're going to do is the holes for the Cowcatcher. So again, you're going to project geometry to the outside edge, not just this face right here. We're going to need 3 points, so I'm just going to place them in anywhere for right now. Just make sure they don't link up to anything so you can move them around freely. So looking here, I know there's a lot of lines and sometimes it gets a little confusing, but if you just follow the lines out, so I want the height of both of these, follow it out. So that is 0.125. Alright, so remember that's from the very bottom edge. So it's going to look like they're right on the edge of the fillet and that, or the round, and that's where they should line up. Okay. And now for this one, this is going to be 1 inch from this edge, and this one's going to be 0.625 for the height. Alright, so for here, for this one, if we follow this line down, we have 3.75. Then our next one, if we follow the line down, we have 1.625. So now all of these are blue, so we know we have all of these constrained. You can finish your sketch, use the hole tool. So these we're not having all through, they're going to be at a distance, and they should not be threaded. So if we look here, so here's the symbol that you normally see for counterbore, but this also is used for just like a flat bottom in the hole. So the diameter is 0.125 and our depth is the same. And for our tool right here, if you look here, we have a point and we also have flat bottom for the drill point. So you can just check or fill in the little dot for flat and then OK. Now we're going to add in the hole for the hitch magnet and hitch peg to be attached. So for these, again, we're going to project geometry to the outside edge. We're going to place a point. So this point, we know it needs to be in the center, so 1 inch. And then from the bottom, it is 0.375. Okay. And it's blue, so we know it's constrained. Now we can use our hole tool. And our diameter is 1/4 inch and our depth is 1/2 inch. And the last hole that we need to add to this is the one for the stack. So this one's a little bit trickier to add because it's not to a flat surface, it's to a curved surface. So we're going to need to add in a plane. So first click on your plane and then click on your second surface to line up your plane. And now we can start a sketch. If you click on the plane, it kind of clicks through, but if you click the edge of it, it highlights your work plane. So for this one, you want to make sure, again, project geometry to the outside edges, the very outside. We are going to add in a point. This one is going to be in the center, so 1 inch. And then from this edge, it will be 0.88. Yep, 0.88. Okay. And then it's going to have a diameter of a 1/2 inch and a depth of a 1/4 inch. So we can finish our sketch, use the hole tool. So we have a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch, and then we can click OK. So now we have this work plane, but we don't want it visible. So over here on your browser, you can right click, and uncheck visibility. And here is your train body.